welcome to Bendy, a podcast about being flexible and all of the ways that means. Thanks for joining us. My name is Andy Young, and I'm one of your terrifying, haunting hosts. Joining me as always is our other terrifying and haunting host, Beth Martin. Beth, the pleasure as always. What's the crack?
What's the crack? It's funny that my crack is explosive vomit, and we're talking about horror today.
It's true. It's very on topic, actually.
Yes,
that's true.
Yes. So I'm dealing
Timely.
with sick children. One has a throat issue. The other one is a vomit issue. And it's like, I feel like in a family, there's usually one kid that's barfy. And like,
interesting.
I was the barfy child for sure. Like if I get sick, it's like Mike's puked once, I think, since I've known him.
Wow.
And I'm like,
good for him.
I know. And I sneeze too hard and I vomit. Like,
yeah.
So my youngest has he just gets like, anytime he gets sick, he throws up. Basically, he gets a fever, and he's just like,
wow.
Yeah, it's gross.
Has he?
He's so nice about it, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's not like the first time. I think it's always like, and you know, I know some people are terrified of vomiting, and it's like a last resort kind of thing, or they just like can't.
Yeah.
I have a friend who like can't vomit, but it's like he's really gracious about it, and like he's always like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's not your fault, you know. But
that's the thing.
The first time it happened, like he cried and he was like, "What's happening?" Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's like scary. So
I suppose because it's like a purge, right? You know, and there's value.
So sorry, everyone. Yeah, I'm like, let's start your day with barf.
But I'd be like, come on, we're like going to be talking about all sorts of gross stuff in this episode, so it's just setting them up. It's easing them into it. Do you know what I mean?
It's true. So yeah, that's what's happening with me basically.
It's crack with you is children. So yeah,
it's a vibe.
It is very much as a vibe. Having some kids, yeah,
I hate it.
A vibe that I would not wish on anyone. And because I think I have other friends who definitely have similar issues. I think you're right. There definitely does seem to be one kid who gets sicker. Because as you were saying, I was trying to think about me as a kid. I think my sister was probably more. She would have been sick more often than I would have been, but I don't think. Certainly I would have, you know, like in our family, the problem is that we all have sensitive. I always forget the name of the things on your face.
Freckles.
No, inside your
capillaries.
Your cavity, the cavities where all the mucus is stored.
Sinuses.
Thank you, sinuses.
You're welcome.
So all of us have brutal like sinus problems.
Okay.
So that's the thing that plagued us. So like we always had a packet or like a box of tissues in the house because all of us had runny noses all the time, and like whenever particularly bad, you know, hay fever or cold things, like our sinuses would really flare up, and it was very painful.
Can I tell you something really embarrassing?
Go for it.
Have I ever told you about the snot chair?
No.
So when I lived in Kentucky, like I always had a runny nose. And like as a kid, it was so runny all the time. I think I had allergies. I was allergic to something, and I was always sick. So I got like my nose was always like chafed and like bloody and just like right. So we were in a tear down house. They were gonna tear it down, and my mom was just like, "I'm just not gonna clean it then because they're gonna build another house." We were living on this like tiny college campus, and there was a like. Kind of like a velvety chair that was sitting on the front porch because it was Kentucky, like next to the washer and dryer. And I like one day I was probably like 4 or 5 years old and was like, that looks so comfortable for my poor fucking nose. And I wiped my nose on the chair and I was like, this is it. And I continued to do this for probably like 6 months.
How interesting.
So like both sides of this chair had like snot like on the arm handles, and no one else could sit in it except for me.
What a gift to your nose though. Just a velvet tissue, a giant velvet tissue.
Disgusting.
It is. But I can understand why.
Yeah.
Because I remember having like a nose that was like red raw from like blowing it so much, and it's
Totally.
just it's not fun.
You needed a snot chair, apparently.
You do,
Yeah.
right? It's very. What reasonable person could deny you a snot chair, right?
Not my parents.
Well, no, exactly not. Okay, so what's it's the crack with me is since last we spoke, I have seen Long Legs, which is on topic for our topic today.
I don't know what that is. No.
Okay, a recent horror film. So it's a recent horror film, and it's got a lot of horror sort of bona fides kind of connected to it.
Ooh.
So it is by director and I think writer Osgood Perkins, who is Anthony Perkins' son.
Oh.
Right? So
poor Anthony Perkins.
I know.
Ugh, such a good actor. Such a nice man. Should have gotten more roles. Yes.
Agreed.
But it's like when you're the guy from Psycho.
Yeah, I think that there was less opportunity. You got... That's maybe unfair, but I feel like maybe people got more pigeonholed back then, especially by something on that scale, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to see it, and it also has so Nicolas Cage is the big
best.
bad.
Like, what is happening? He going through such a rough period, and then all of a sudden, like all of it, like what's the one with Pedro
Pascal? Oh yeah, I know exactly the movie you mean, but I can't think the name of it.
It's so good.
I've heard it's great.
It's so... You haven't seen it?
No.
You must see it.
Yeah, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yeah, it's like right up your alley.
Yeah, I had
like
wanted to see it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Okay,
okay. Uh-huh.
Because
it highlights his whole, like... I'm not going to give too much away, but it's like this guy hires him because he's like a huge fan, to the point where he's got like a whole like hidden room in his house that has like all of the props from all of his movies that they actually use because they need them because like shit goes down. It's great.
Okay.
It's great.
Yeah. I had wanted to, and but like that guy at the minute. Well, I mean, it's maybe always the case. Has like 6-7 movies out a year. It's crazy.
Yes.
Like he's in so much.
Well, he's got like lots of child support to pay. So.
Well, that's true. But
I mean, he said that. That's not me being an asshole.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like, I have a lot of child support to
pay. But he's the kind of the big bad in this. He's not really the focal point of it, and it's Micah Monroe, who was in a horror movie that I really enjoyed. I think It Follows. I think, and it's really getting loads of hype, and it's getting like high scores from critics across the board. But I found it a wee bit disappointing. I thought that the tone and everything was fantastic, and the setup was really great, but I don't think it delivered in the way it all kind of wrapped up. I felt like it telegraphed where it was going too much, in my opinion, and I thought some of the dialogue was crap, but it was still interesting, and I think visually it was a really kind of like, it was just such, it was so underlit and really kind of like lots of like sickly sort of tones, like greens and yellows and things like that, and it was really good in that way. It's just it just didn't really kind of. It's really good visuals. There's a visual of like a I want to talk about it in vague detail. I guess a figure with like a kind of black veil over it and these like glowing yellow eyes that just slowly get brighter. That's really quite effective, but it's just, I don't know. I just wanted more from it, but it was still very interesting, I must say. And again, apparently everybody else likes it, so what do I know? So yeah, I've enjoyed that. I also went to see Twisters, which I friggin' loved.
Okay. I love Twister. Loved it. So
check it out. It's like it's doesn't do anything spectacular, but it is a really well made action movie, and it's and the people have said maybe why it's doing well is that it stands alone. Although yes, it is a sequel, but it is very much its own thing, and it's a story that tells. It's a movie that tells a complete story. It doesn't rely on, I don't know, the lore from like a Marvel movie or like a John Wick movie or Fast and Furious or whatever.
Right.
And it's great because of that. So I really like that a lot. And yeah, I think so. The other thing was, and it's kind of a reluctant Andy's down with the streets.
Okay.
I feel like this is a duty based one more than anything. Because
A what
very
based?
much a duty. Hold on a minute. DUTY.
Duty based.
Duty. Yeah. Duty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like in Caddyshack. Duty.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's so funny. That's what things are so funny for us, because we say those words so differently. So I always feel like I am bound to do this. I need to talk about it, but it's so mainstream now. And the Andy's Down with the Street term for this episode is cook.
Cook.
So you're familiar with the modern use of the word cook, as in let my man cook. No. Okay.
No, as
okay.
in like
I'm glad.
meth, maybe, but
No.
not. No. What is it? What?
So it's like let him do his thing or let her do her thing.
Okay.
So for example, it's oftentimes you'll
Like
see
let
it
it
whenever,
simmer.
it's sort of like if they are doing something awesome, let them continue to do it rather than criticizing them. So like for example, we're not a political podcast obviously, but Kamala Harris recently like talking trash about her opponent, and somebody was like, let my girl cook.
Yeah.
As in let her keeps talking on this subject, and
Keep her on the boiler.
Yes, exactly. on a low simmer, so it's what I've been really enjoying, and I see it more and more these days. So yeah, cook, as in letting somebody just do their thing in a cool way. I also see it used for like guys hitting on girls and stuff like that. You know what I mean? As in let him do his thing.
Let him cook. Okay. I can be hip to that.
That's a nice one, isn't it? It's fun.
I will say people like this part of the podcast.
They do?
Yeah.
I'm friggin' nerds.
I know, right? I'm going to switch our current because this has, I don't know if you got more of this for our next episode, but someone asked they said, ask Andy to share the sign. Someone posted that I sent him. I did not understand it at all. It had cap in it.
Oh, yeah. So, like, I know who this was. She
Yes.
sent it to me. And, okay, I will see if I can pull up this
Okay.
full sign here. And I will try and translate it as best I can.
Okay.
Okay. Beth, do you want to vamp
I
for me
do.
a wee second?
I do. So this is a mutual friend of ours that we met at yoga school. So I'm just going to say, hi, Karen. We love you. And thank you for listening. And she's also moving to London in 6 weeks.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
Like, for good?
For good. So you probably will see her. And she's worried
cool,
about
yeah,
getting a job. So let her know dog walking is an option.
Oh, wow. It's a get-rich-slow scheme.
Right.
At best. Okay. So, this is the phrase. This is the sign that she sent. I'll just read it out. It says, dude, the sickest flex is showing respect. No cap. So, I think most of that is self-explanatory, right? So, the sickest is, the most awesome. Flex is showing off.
I would like really say this in layman's terms.
Okay, let's break it down. So, dude, a cool man or woman. The sickest, it would be the best, the greatest. It's one of those ironic opposite things. Flex is if you're showing off. So, the best sort of way to show off is to show respect. I think we understand show respect, right? Hey, everybody out there, show people respect.
Let us cook.
Yeah, let us cook. All right, show people respect. The difficult one, I think, at the end is no cap, which you've talked about before, but I'll discuss it again. So, if something is cap, it's a lie. If something is no cap, it's the truth. So, saying no cap at the end of that statement is saying that that's the truth. So basically, it's saying showing respect is the coolest sort of way you can be, and that's the truth. Is that's well explained, right?
I'm giving you little golf claps for that.
Yeah. Right, so just tell me at home how excellent a job I did on a
I
scale
think this
of...
needs to be part of this segment, is you, like, speaking it in white man's layman's terms.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, okay. That's good. It does work quite well, doesn't it? Yeah. All right, I like it. Okay,
At
so,
least I
that's...
am highly entertained, so that's really what matters.
So, yeah, exactly. That's what we're doing this for at the end of the day. Okay, that was another highly successful installment of Andy's Down with the Streets. I hope you enjoyed it. I think, unless we have any What's Occurring, do you have any What's Occurring?
That was my What's Occurring.
That is actually something I was going to bring up too, so that's perfect.
Okay.
So that's both
Okay,
our What's
good.
Occurring. We can move on with today's topic, which is about horror movies, and is titled The Horror, The Horror.
Which, can you name that movie?
Huh?
That
What's it
is
from?
Yes.
It's Donald Pleasance, isn't it? Mm-mm. Oh, then no.
Apocalypse Now.
I see. Okay.
At the very end, when, like, the Major, who is Marlon Brando, who's like, I love this story about this movie because he got the part and then showed up like 350 pounds, and so they had to shroud him in darkness, which is why,
interesting.
like, yeah, but it totally works for the film. But at the end, like, that's when he's dying, like, that's what he says, is the horror.
I like how little of a shit Marlon Brando eventually gave about, like, acting, all these things. He was just like, whatever, fuck you guys. Yeah, it's been so long since I've seen that film, so I don't know that I would have. I mean, but there's so many clips of it.
Colonel? I don't remember his rank.
Colonel Kurtz,
but I don't remember if he was a major or a colonel or what his.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Sorry, sure everyone.
People will tell us.
I know.
You're screaming.
Yes.
That's your podcast.
Sorry.
I know. Sorry.
Yeah, but
so we're just going to talk about horror movies. What are how we grew up with horror movies, our experience with them, our feelings on them, and as always, we'd love to get thoughts and feedback from people on their thoughts on this too.
Mm-hmm. Give us your thoughts.
Yes, please. Always. Thoughts,
if they're noteworthy.
Reviews, if they're good. If they're not, stuff them wherever you feel is appropriate.
Okay.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about generally your feeling in horror and maybe where you got started with it?
Yeah, that was my question for you, was like, do you love or hate it? I guess. And I love horror movies.
I think I was a hater for a long time, but I have started coming around to them more in the past 10, 15 years maybe. But I think for a long time, and I will talk a little bit about the reason why I really was not fussed on them for a long time as we go on.
Yeah, I was introduced to horror movies probably fairly early on. It was more like, you can't watch a rated R movie, but like PG-13 movies or PG movies, like some of them are just as scary to a child, right? And they used to make movies have a certain rating so more people would watch them. So like a PG or PG-13 movie would actually, like, nowadays it would be R, but the way that the rating agencies work, like, you can't say this, but
yes,
you can't be nude, but you can be, whatever.
There's rules. You can shoot a guy in the head and it's a PG, but
exactly.
You can't show boobs. It's like, God forbid.
God forbid, right? So, like, watching like Rosemary's Baby was normal for me as a child. An American Werewolf in London, like those kinds of things. I remember being sort of like, oh, like, let's watch this again. And my dad being like, this is one of the ones, for your education. And like, oh, she's had the devil, and everybody was in on it. Like, right. Like, so I guess I see the place that horror has, both like for the pure entertainment value, but also the place that it has, like, intercultural, lexicon, I guess.
Yeah.
So, like, the horror, right? You didn't know what movie that was from, but you knew the quote.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So.
yeah. I think I'm now trying to think where I kind of know it from, and I'm pretty certain it's like sampled in like a
Techno song.
yeah, basically, yeah. And I gotta see if I can dig that out and send it to you. But
Okay.
but yeah, it's I mean like, and it's so like for me, I guess so. What happened with me was, I mean, like, I was always a fragile, scared sort of boy, I guess. Not much has changed. And I was, I found a lot of things scary. Like, I remember being really scared of, like, some of the monsters in Ghostbusters, for example, seeing that when I was young. So, like,
the lady at the very beginning still freaks me out.
Yeah. And, like, also whenever, like, the character that Sigourney Weaver turns into, and the dogs and stuff like that really freaked me out. Yeah. It was so scary. And I also remember other things, like there was a monster in one of the Superman movies, so like Superman 3, I believe, the one with Richard Pryor in it, where the lady gets like all this like metal wrapped around her and becomes like half human, half robot. That creature freaked me out. Still kind of stays with me. So like I was always kind of hesitant to kind of approach horror in a sort of major way, and I didn't really. And then my first sort of proper exposure to it, and I think this is what put me off it for so long, was, and I did talk about the event here a little bit as well. So we had this thing in school. It's one of these things that is staggering that we were ever allowed to do it. So we had in school an RPG club, role-playing game club, and a kind of it was called a war games club. So it was both
what's a PG club?
An RPG club,
RPG.
so role-playing games.
Sorry. Yep.
So it was both a club for playing role-playing games, so things like Dungeons and Dragons. At the time, we were also playing like Star Wars role-playing games and a variety of other bits and pieces. And also some of the folks were playing Warhammer. Like Games Workshop stuff. People will either know or not know what that is. Henry Cavill likes it. That's your touch point if you don't know.
Right. Also Superman, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So at that, so we were essentially given free reign of the school for 24 hours, ostensibly for a charity things. We were raising money, but
they're
we're
keeping these kids away from alcohol.
Yes, and it was fucking wild. Like, it was just kind of us running about. People were like doing wrestling moves on each other. It was like there's two teachers there. God love them. Like, I don't know how they managed to keep us on track. And at that, despite it, being for kids from like 13, 14 up to like kids of about 16, 17, there was tons of people brought in horror movies. So there was Hellraiser was there, and I saw Hellraiser that night and I really did not like it. It really upset me. That movie is fucked up in a very sort of specific way, I think, and I just really struggled with it. Especially like the guy getting all his skin peeled off and all that sort of stuff, and bleh. So that really put me off horror movies for a long time. I also saw, I believe it was Bad Taste, one of the early Peter Jackson films. I always forget the actual name of it, and I find it really, they were two kind of like opposite ends of a horror. I find it like really puerile and kind of dumb, and really kind of thought, if this is what horror has to offer me, which is stuff that actually genuinely upsets me, or this dumb trash, it's not a genre for me, really. Mm-hmm. And I think that stopped me from watching any horror for 15 years, maybe.
Wow.
20 years. Yeah.
So you were like in your mid-20s?
I definitely I would say...
That's so sweet.
I know. I would say, like, don't get me wrong, I definitely... maybe explored a few movies here and there of like, the sort of more worthwhile horror movies. So like The Exorcist, I think for me, The Thing, is
which one?
sensational.
Which version?
the only version that's worth talking about, the John Carpenter one.
Yeah.
The
I own the DVD and we watch it.
It's a
Mike's like,
masterpiece.
are the kids ready for the thing? And I'm like, no.
It's
No.
it's such an incredible movie.
That's like a once a year watch at least.
Yeah, it is. It's sensational. So like I did those things, bits and pieces of those, but it's just other stuff. So like, you know, you're more sort of like your high profile horrors like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween. I've not seen any of those.
Okay.
Because I just wasn't interested in that really. You know, Child's Play I suppose is another big one that I never really watched. So all these sort of big, like I haven't seen a single, what do you call the more recent ones where people get like trapped? There's the crazy puppet thing in the tricycle, Saw.
Oh yeah, I haven't.
The Saw movies.
Those.
I haven't seen any of those.
No.
You like so many of these like big ticket horror movie franchises. I have no connection to at all.
Yeah, I think I prefer not the newer horror movies. They're all like, I guess The Cabin in the Woods is maybe the last one that I was like, oh, this is good. And every time M. Night Shyamalan comes out with something, I'm like, please be as good as The Sixth Sense. But it never is, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, M. Night.
That's fair.
I know you're listening. But like,
of course.
I love like the movies from like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
When I think like the genre was still like really being developed and they weren't retelling the stories over and over and over kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have like The Thing. I remember watching, I was probably 13 or 14 watching the movie Duel. Have you ever seen that? It's
I have.
Steven Spielberg's first movie, and it's like this movie about a guy that's like driving in probably like Nevada, Southern California in the desert, and he's like being harassed and tracked by a guy in a semi-truck, and you can't see his face, and it's this whole like, that's literally it. That's the movie, but it's terrifying.
It is.
And I don't know what it had to do with English class or literature, but we watched it, and that's why Barb Murray is my favorite English teacher ever.
That's I mean, I suppose like it's good to get people educated, especially, and I always like, and it was one I tracked down just because I was like, well, Spielberg's clearly so important for everyone, I think, who likes movies. So it was good to see where he kind of got started, really, because I think he did Duel and then like straight into Jaws.
It was something like maybe like 2 or 3 movies later.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, obviously, that's
like
a horror movie.
Is that a horror? It's
so
horror.
This is my question. Like, what?
It's horror adjacent.
Yeah, like what constitutes a horror movie for you?
I think something that genuinely unsells me, and it's something as I was putting this together, I was thinking about some stuff that I love that I don't know if it's horror or not, because certainly my relationship with Evil Dead, my first Evil Dead movie was Army of Darkness, and which was like completely different to what went before it, and kind of going back to those films, at first I really didn't like them because it just wasn't what I was looking for, but I have come to appreciate them a lot more. And they're a bit more like slocky and a bit more silly too. Like they're not as silly as Army of Darkness, but like certainly as that franchise went on, in terms of the original trilogy, it became less about horror and more about like
camp
comedy almost, you know?
Like, let's just be as gross as possible for funny.
And let's just do some dumb shit, And I think it's stuff that unsettles me, I think, and certainly, my way back into horror has been through stuff that is a bit different, just a kind of different sort of angle on horror. Like I find stuff that I don't expect scary. Do you know what I mean? So like if I think about It Follows, for example, which is a recent one that I loved, and the different visuals of the creature that we're following them. There is still a scene where they are in the girl's room, and the version of the creature is represented by a really tall man, and he just steps through the room, and he's really tall, and that was just like, oh, and it was just so effectively done, you know. So yeah, it's very much the unexpected for me, I think. What about
Yeah,
you?
I would say like the unexpected, anything that makes you like jump,
Yeah,
when you're like, oh God, and you get that feeling, that rush of like adrenaline just from like watching
yeah,
something, which is such an interesting thing when you're not even experiencing it, but your body has a physical reaction
yeah,
to something. Um,
absolutely.
so like I was thinking, like, does murder count as horror? And then I was like, well, yeah, like Seven and The Silence of the Lambs
Yeah,
and The Silence of the Lambs 2. And wasn't there a third? Like
I don't
Clarice or
know.
whatever. Anyways, uh like those things I think count. I also, this is going to be a very unpopular thing. Baby
Uh-huh.
Reindeer, I think to me was horror.
I still haven't
Cuz
watched it. I need to get
I
onto
don't
it.
think you should. I watched it again and like it's just it rips my heart apart,
Okay.
and there's like periods where like I'm so uncomfortable that like I have like that uncomfortable like visceral reaction, and it's not horror, but it's like people treating each other not well.
Yes, I
And
that's yeah.
so
Like initially
maybe
perverse.
I'm like a sensitive soul like you.
I think like initially perversely when you were talking about that, I was like, oh, uncomfortable. That sounds good to me. But whenever you got to the end there, I was like, yeah, maybe not. Actually, I just
Yeah.
don't like. I find that a bit tough. Go on. Um, it's you know, it's interesting because like I do love stuff. Within shows and dramas that I watch, stuff that really gets into the human condition. I think I've talked about this before,
Mhm.
and I think there are certainly some scary aspects to that. There certainly can be, and when they're well portrayed, you know, I think I really appreciate the complete picture of humans. So like the good stuff and the horrifying aspect, but I think when I think about horror, I do have a mold for better or for worse that they kind of fit into. And I think that like certainly certain franchises or certain movies have jumped between different areas. Like I think the first Alien movie is definitely a horror.
Mhm.
I think the second movie is much more of an action movie. And then the ones after that, who knows?
Yeah.
But like I think there's something to be said about how the flexibility of a concept or of an idea that can fit into those molds as well. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting area, I think, in terms of classifying it.
Would you watch a horror movie by yourself?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
what happens after?
Um, I'm not like I don't think I take it with me anymore. I think I used to. Like it depends. So it really depends on the movie. There's very few things that like properly unsettle me anymore. I think if I think about recent films that really kind of got under my skin, it's more about what they had to say about people. So like Hereditary, I found,
I was going to talk about that. Hereditary and Mother.
yeah, Mother's a wild one. Mother is just nuts
Yeah.
though. I don't know
Yeah,
what
it's kind
Mother is.
yeah. I kind of gave up like partway through like thinking at all, and I was just like, all right, I'm not going to understand this, so like I'm not even going to try. But
I
Hereditary freaked me out.
yeah, it's properly unsettling, and in terms of recent things that I saw, it was one that I struggled with. And I think I just needed to take some time away, and like it was one I watched on a plane, so then I just
You're
finished that
just
off by
yeah, you're like I'm
watching
gonna
something stupid afterwards,
right.
to reset
A
myself,
romantic comedy.
Yeah, yeah, no, probably just it's something dumber, a Marvel movie. Uh, so like I think that's what I do. Probably in those circumstances, I do a reset. I maybe or go for a walk. Just purge it. Like the other recent one that really kind of stayed with me was the Babadook. because
I
of what it's
tried to
about.
watch The Babadook, and I could not get into it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's hard going.
Okay.
I think it's a good film, and I think the core message is very interesting, but it's a tough watch.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, Mike is really scared of horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he hates it. Like, I do the, like, sweaty palm test. So we'll be
Mm-hmm.
watching something, and if I like reach over and I'll just like slide my hand on his hand, and if it's sweaty, then I know he's terrified, which is like 90% of the time. So it's not like he doesn't like watching scary things at all. So if I do watch scary things, it's usually when I'm by myself. Um, and then if I'm by myself, it's usually like he's out of town, and then I'm like, I'm sleeping with one of my children tonight because I don't want to be in bed by myself.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that like certain what was the one that I watched recently? It was on Netflix. It was basically there was this hand that you could shake the hand and you could like speak to somebody. Does that sound familiar to
Mm-mm,
you
I
at
haven't seen
all?
it. No.
Um, and
What a
I
trippy concept.
yeah, it's kind of wild. It was okay. It was a decent enough movie. I don't think it really kind of delivered on its kind of promise in a major way, but the whole idea was that you shook this kind of zombified hand and you were possessed by a ghost for a while, but then like basically one of the main characters like younger brothers does it and he like starts smashing his head against the wall and all this sort of stuff and it just kind of goes yeah into a bad place. But it's I think it had some effective stuff. You know, things in movies where it's like there's a dark, there's an area of darkness and then just something comes out of the darkness. Those things I've struggled with whenever I've been in the house by myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, all the lights on before I go to bed.
Yep. Yep.
And
Like
then,
check
yeah.
all the rooms, check the locks
Yeah.
again. Yeah, I think like I was trying to figure out like what are the things about horror movies that actually scare me, kind of like that. Like what are the visual or like for me really, it's I find it sound. So if I turn like if I'm really
Yeah.
freaked out, I'll mute it, and then it's funny, and then I start thinking like this is my trick for my own brain where I'm like, okay, it's muted, and then I start thinking about how they're shooting it and like when they take breaks and someone's probably wanting coffee and someone else is hungover and like I wonder how many takes they're doing and then I think about like the private jokes that they have in order to like have some levity while they're filming it. Like that's where I go in my brain. So I just picture
Yeah, I
them
like
actually
that.
filming it instead of
Yeah.
it being a real thing and I make it not real.
Yes. I like that. It's a good way to combat
Uh-huh.
it. I think so. It's just because, like, I think as I said, like, my relationship with horror movies has been so patchy over the years. I just haven't had to think about. I just don't put myself in that place too often, so it's not really been. And like, one of the other things I was thinking about the movie, by the way, that I was talking about was called Talk to Me, the one where the movie where they shook the hand and got
Writing
possessed.
all these down.
Um, it's an interesting idea. It's definitely worth a watch, but I just wasn't blown away by it.
Okay.
But I was, something that I also was thinking about where it was like zombie movies, which is like, did they count? Are they? I mean, they're certainly
Yeah.
horror adjacent.
It's like I feel like zombies are their own genre.
Yeah, it's true.
It's totally adjacent, but like our obsession with this idea of like people being risen from the dead and then like eating other people and then them turning into zombies too. Like that's so it's enough where it's like it's its own genre.
Yeah, it's true. I think don't they say that like it's kind of it's all about kind of viruses really more than anything and
Yeah.
plagues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is the root
Yeah.
of those sorts of
Like
things?
would you
Yeah.
like lump that in with like Contagion? Like if you watch World War Z and then like them breaching the
Yeah.
wall, right? That was terrifying though.
It's true. It's
So
true.
I guess if you're talking about like reaction, like physical reaction of like, oh, ah, that feeling, like, yeah, it does count as horror. But I think that kind of
I
like Evil Dead is kind of its own genre.
Yes, it's true. It very much is. Like, yeah, I like, I think when I think about certain aspects again, it's the humanity side of it that is always gives me those scares because I think about like, 24 hours later. Is that right? Yeah,
28 days later.
28. Was the first one 28 days later, isn't it? Yes, it is 28 days later. What am I saying? And um, one of the
That
characters
one,
basically
yeah.
looking up and getting a drop of blood in their
That
eye
was
and just
I was just gonna talk about that.
yeah,
And you liked him. He was so lovable. And
he
he was such a good
was.
dad. And you're like, yeah, and
Yeah.
you're rooting for him. And then it's like they're there and you know they're gonna be okay. And then he looks up and like he gets the zombie blood drop from the stupid crow in his eye. And you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah,
he
it's
immediately
heartbreaking.
starts reacting and the daughter's there and it's just like, oh, I cried. Like I'm sad thinking about it.
I think that like that is one of the things that I find I struggle a little bit and I like things that break those tropes. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There is always kind of a whenever a character turns up, they're maybe not completely pure, but they're mostly a good guy. They have a family that loves them. They're something horrible is going to happen to them. Like, I mean, it's not a horror film, but in like a Roadhouse that I watched recently, when Sam Elliott turns up, you're like, oh man, and he's like so nice to the lady that Patrick Swayze's dating, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. It's like a river runs
No
through it. You're
spoilers.
like, Brad Pitt's gonna die. Brad Pitt's gonna die. When's he gonna die? Yep. Sorry, everyone. That happened too.
Sorry, spoilers for those movies.
For all those people that are rushing out to watch a river runs through it.
Right. I can imagine you can't wait to watch a river run through it. But yeah, I like so it's just it is definitely it definitely the humanity aspect of horror that really gets to me, and going back to the thing, that's so interesting because it is very much becoming humans. The creature in that movie is changing into other humans, and like how well it manifests as them is very unsettling to me.
Mm. What was the one that came out where it's like they would look you in the eye and then you would turn into a zombie?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, I gotta find it. It was terrifying. And so everyone
Was it recent?
Yeah, and everyone had like paper over their windows. You couldn't see outside, and it was like as soon as they made eye contact, like it was the whole thing. It's terrifying.
Interesting.
That was a horrible.
Yeah.
That was a horrible. I'm like, this movie, don't know what it's called, and here's kind of what it's about. So, would you spend the night in a forest alone?
Yeah, I especially because like the forests here are pretty non-scary,
That's
right?
true. They're like, you can see from one end to the other.
Yeah. Apart from the banshees,
Right.
Do
you have moors?
Not really. Kind
That's more
of,
like
I
a
guess.
British thing.
It is more of a British thing. I think in Wales and England we don't we're not really. And there's certain areas, and I like it's so small here generally that you're never that far from civilization really. Like I definitely think the scope of America is scarier in that regard. I mean, you can be properly isolated in a way that is hard for us to kind of get our heads around. So
there's
I
also
would
weirdos.
Yes, this is also true, and I think that's scarier more than anything. And I would, but I wouldn't. I mean, for a start, I don't really like sleeping in a tent anyway. Or even so. Like I don't think I would. It wouldn't be my choice, but if I had to, I would be okay with it. I could sleep. I think probably poorly, but I would sleep.
I would not.
What about you?
I would not.
No.
I know maybe it's because I'm a woman.
Yeah, it's different.
And I know other women that go camping by themselves, and I'm like, I would never do that. You're just asking to be murdered.
Yeah.
Or you're asking for like some monster to come and attack you in the middle of the night. Like I read Christopher Pike books as a middle schooler. I know this.
Uh,
Sorry, the dog is barking.
It's one of the reasons why I keep meaning to watch. Is it the Reese Witherspoon one, Into the Wild? Is that it?
Yeah.
Where she's like hiking basically.
Yeah, it's
by herself.
It's based on the Cheryl Strayed book, and her mom dies, and then she develops like a drug addiction. She's actually from Portland, and so
okay.
I was at a reading that she gave once. She's a very nice lady, and she actually I don't think she does anymore, but she used to write the Dear Sugar column. She was Sugar.
Oh, yeah.
But so like to combat like drug addiction and grief, she's like, I'm gonna go hike the Pacific Crest Trail, which is like this really long I think it's like, I don't even, like 3-month hike that you do from like Mexico all the way up to, it ends at the Bridge of the Gods on the Columbia River, which we were right by there when I took you up in the gorge. But yeah, she's like hiking and like all these like creepy things happen to her, and there's
I was gonna say,
yeah, it's like freaky.
Sadly, I'm not surprised that some of those things happen.
And she loses one of her boots, which to me is horror.
Shit. Yeah, that is horror.
Yeah, like falls down the canyon. There's like no hope to get it back, kind of thing, and you're just like duct tape your foot. I can't even. Dandy's like, no.
Fair play to her.
Especially after like your marathon hike.
Yeah, no thanks.
That lasted a day.
I mean, I've learned my lesson ish. Talk to me again in a month.
So, I guess within horror, what would you say is your favorite genre?
I guess probably more like monsters, so things like Alien, I guess, would qualify for that. Thing, I would guess, would qualify for that. Those are my, probably stuff that falls under the more sort of genre stuff, like, almost like sci-fi, I guess, in some ways, but I've always had, and I've always liked those conceptually. That would be my favorite,
Yeah. I think for me, it's not so much a genre as I love a twist at the end.
Yeah.
And a good one that I can't predict. Because, like, usually there's a formula and you're like, all right, she's a virgin. She's going to die. Like, oh, he's a nice person. He's going to die. So it's when I can't predict what's going to happen. And then at the end, there's like something that happens and then you're like, oh my God, like everything I thought I knew, I don't know. There's, I would say one of the scariest, or like someone that's trying to figure something out, like there's a murder and they're trying to figure out.
I'm thinking of something. Okay, what are you going to say?
Well, there's this movie, and it's not the Angelina Jolie one. It's it's the Sir something something one, called The Changeling.
Oh yeah.
And it's like about this man that moves into this house and there's a ghost, and it's a ghost of a child, and it's like trying to communicate with him, but there's this scene where like there's a child's ball and the ball comes bouncing down the stairs and there's no one in the house but him, and it's just like so fucking freaky. And then like it freaks him out. He's like, fuck this shit, right? So he takes the ball and he like takes a long walk and he throws it in the river, and then he comes home and shuts the door and a wet ball comes bouncing down the stairs. And it was like, for me, I was like, oh my God, like so fucking scary. And then, but like he like is going through and he's finding out like, oh, it's, actually like the person that lived here's son who's still alive is like not the actual child. The child that was the actual child was murdered because he had a deformity, and the father was like a powerful man. Jeez. And he didn't want this like deformed child, to be sickly, and taking the reins of his important business or something. So it's like, those are the ones where I'm like, it's terrifying, and there's humanity, and there's redemption at the end,
Yeah, I think, definitely effective the ones where it's like, the real monster, humanity.
Yeah.
It's always,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one I was thinking about was just in terms of you talking about things with twists. And I mean, like it is almost a cliche. This film, I'm not going to spoil it, but Jacob's Ladder is. Have you seen Jacob's Ladder?
No. I've heard of it
So
a bunch.
it is. It's a famous one. So it's. Oh no, I've forgotten.
Is
his
it a good
name.
twist?
It is. If you don't know, it's a pretty like. Yeah, I mean Tim Robbins. That's what I was looking for. It is. It's unlike anything else I have seen. I only got around to watching
I'm
it.
circling this on my piece of paper.
Yeah. It's like nothing else I've seen. It's pretty full on. Yeah. But it's a good movie. I think it's not an amazing movie, but it's a pretty good movie. It's definitely worth checking out. It's also occurred to me the kind of horror movies that I don't like at all, which is body horror stuff.
Okay. So yeah, I was like, what are the worst ones that you're like not a fan of?
I really have never it's particularly Cronenberg movie stuff, like body horror stuff in particular. I find really tough.
Rob Zombie.
Yes. No, I've only seen bits of some of his movies and I'm just like, these are not for me. But I remember there's there was some Japanese films as well, horror films that were Tetsuo Body Hammer. It's this guy that tries to modify himself by putting metal inside his body and it starts infecting him.
Say the name again.
It's Tetsuo Body Hammer, I think, is the movie.
No. Yeah,
I
know.
There has been.
Doesn't he have a giant
Tetsuo the Iron Man?
Yeah, so I remember watching that in high school. And doesn't he have a penis that's a drill and he has sex with a lady and blah, literally drills her. I remember watching that in high school and all my dude friends were like, "Oh, let's watch Tetsuo the Iron Man again." I'd be like, And he was in the mirror and looking at his skin and it's metal underneath. I totally have seen that stuff. Ugh, hate it. Would never watch it again.
So that's the sort of stuff that I really struggle with, truly.
Yeah.
That's gross. But I find, I know some people really I think some people like the kind of buttons that pushes in other people more than that sort of style of movie. Maybe that's just how I look at it. But I find those very difficult.
Yeah, for me watch. It's torture and mutilation.
Yes.
Reservoir Dogs isn't horror, but I just can't. I watched it once and I was like, yeah, I can't watch that again. Misery.
Yeah, Misery's brutal. Yeah.
Well, in the book, she was supposed to cut his feet off. She does cut his feet off. In the movie, she hobbles him.
Yeah, she shatters his ankles, yeah.
By putting a piece of wood in between his ankles and then hitting his ankles with a sledgehammer. That to me was that's horror.
Yeah.
I can't even. I'm gonna go vomit in my snot chair, but can't. No, and I read something the other day actually about how they filmed that, and it's they're fake feet, right?
Yeah.
But still, I remember reading how affected Kathy Bates was by filming it. After she was done with the scene, she went and puked in the bathroom because it was just so horrible for her. And then she got an Oscar, and it was all good.
Works out.
It all works out.
I'm thinking about because I just as we've been talking about this, other things have been occurring to me. I've been thinking about the found footage genre and stuff like that, which I have not only dabbled in, and there was one
found footage
called...
Blair Witch.
Yes.
Documentary style.
Yes, there's one that I watched, a Japanese one called Norai, The Curse, and it is. I thought it was sensational. It was the best of those sorts of things that I have seen, because essentially what it is basically the concept is that it's a load of stuff has been cobbled together around this myth of this curse in this Japanese town, this Japanese village. So there's both footage of this guy who's researching it, but also like a Japanese game like a Japanese game show where these two wacky characters go and like do various things, and they go to the village and investigate this, and like, so it's like it's just so tonally all over the place, but I find it more effective, the most effective kind of found footage horror movie I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. I really like that a lot.
Yeah,
it's unsettling even thinking about it.
Totally. I have a hard time with it. Kind of makes me like car sick. Mm-hmm. Where it's like the camera that's like being jumbled around and like bumped, and they're running, and it's like, okay, like, can you I just want to, I get annoyed, I think, and I don't
understand.
feel,
I think it is one of the
I get
better
it.
ones.
Yeah, I get it, but it's
if you're curious about it, I've seen a few, and it's the one that really worked for me. I just think because the nature of a lot of the footage is like supposed to be a proper documentarian or clips from a TV show, so it's like better put together, do you know what I mean, than a lot of those others, but I totally understand where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. I think, well, I mean, like, I'm looking at time, thinking maybe we'd start wrapping up, so I guess the one question I had for you before we wrap up is, do you feel like movies are the most effective medium for horror, or like do you find horror as good as a book, as good as I suppose books the only other major way?
I wrote down things that are horror that are not related to movies. Taxes. Mm-hmm. Running out of peanut butter or running out of ketchup.
Yeah.
That's horror for me. Like running out of ketchup specifically.
A nightmare. Ketchup.
I can't. This is, I guess I'm showing I'm raising my little tiny American flag. And then I have a story that my dad told me. And stop me if I've already told you this. But did I tell you about him like swimming in the lake with his friends and seeing the hand? Okay.
No.
So this is a true story. So he's like hanging out in, I think, either New Jersey or upstate New York in the summer. He was probably like, I don't know, 10, 11. And he was playing Marco Polo with his friends. Except for, like, you would have to catch the other person under the water. So you'd come up and try and hear and then go back under and try and find him. And it was, like, super murky water. And he was, like, swimming around. And, like, in those days, everyone opened their eyes underwater and didn't wear goggles.
Yeah, of course.
He was like swimming and like came up, and like his friends are like way, way far away, and he went back down, and this hand, he's swimming and sees this hand coming for him and like almost grabs his face, and he like comes up because he thinks his friend is there, and he's like, oh my God, who was that? And there's nobody there, and all of his friends are still like way, way out there, and he counts them all, and they're all way out there, and he's like, I don't know who it was, but there was a goddamn hand there, and and I can't explain it. And I was just like, that to me is like, that's when I'm like, oh, horror really exists, right?
Yeah. In
the unexplained experiences that we have. And like the way he would tell the story way better than me because he was a natural, whereas I'm a pretender.
No, still chilling.
But yeah, it freaks me out.
Ooh. That's a good way.
I'll leave that with you. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I like that. I think unless we have anything else, that's a good way to wrap things up.
Yeah. You're welcome, everyone.
But,
true story.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, sleep well, everyone.
Sleep well. And our best Bela Lugosi laughs.
Yeah. Tell us, your thoughts on horror, and
he didn't say horror. He said horror.
Horror. Any thoughts you have would be great, much welcome. But yeah, as usual, and then it's time to get to our favorite section, which is what's been bringing you joy this week.
Okay.
Joy down in my heart.
Where?
Yeah.
I have two that are kind of related, kind of not. I'm watching Sunny on Apple TV.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
Is it?
I love it. So it's Rashida Jones.
Yes, she rocks.
Who is Quincy Jones's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And she plays this character really well. there's like a robot and the Yakuza are involved, and that's all I'm going to say. And I apologize if I pronounce it incorrectly, but it's really good. And I'm annoyed now because I'm caught up, and I got to wait a week.
Okay.
I hate it.
Yeah, I saw it was releasing weekly, and I was curious about it, so I might hold off. Like, I'm still close to finishing Dark Matter.
30 minutes. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to finish that off first. I've literally got one more episode to go. I may watch it tonight.
Are you confused?
I'll watch it before. No, I really like it because
Do you understand? So have all the other dudes showed up?
Yes.
And you understand that?
Yes.
Okay, I did.
So
not.
like,
I was just like, I don't get it.
But like, it is. I think what I really liked about it was that I like how, because like, okay, Beth, as we've realized, I have read some quantum physics books. I'm really smart, so it's no problem. No, but like, I really like how it handles some of those concepts. I like how it talks about. I like how he gets around the problem of navigating superposition. I thought it was quite a cool fix. I'm not going to talk about this show too with spoilers. So like, I really like that what it's dealing with, and I quite like him as an actor as well. So
I do too.
I'm really digging it. Also, Jennifer Connelly as well. So yeah, I'm
excited
to see where she is.
Yeah.
And like, ageless. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Ageless beauty.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really digging it. But sorry, did you have another Joy?
I do. So I really I forget how much. Do you remember the preview channel or do you remember pop-up videos?
No. That sounds
Okay.
familiar. Like, MTV would have had them, I think, right?
It was like MTV or like VH1 or what. So they would like have a video, but they would like show you like all the facts and like random facts, and it was very enjoyable. And like, if anyone is listening, please bring back pop-up video. But another show that was around the same time was the preview show. And it was, that's all it was. It was like 30 minutes of upcoming movies. Previews. Mm-hmm. And like, we've been going to the movies maybe once a month or twice a month. That's a lot for us. But it's like my favorite thing is to get there early enough now to see the commercials. Because they do that now. It drives me crazy. But also like, I love previews. So I just, right before I hopped on with you, I saw the preview for Complete Unknown. Which is Timothée Chalamet's
Bob Dylan thing?
Yeah, about Bob Dylan. And I was like, I saw some like stills of them filming, and I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. And then the preview changed my mind.
Okay, I've heard, I think he's got talent, that guy. That kid, he's gonna go places.
I know. You think?
So,
you've heard it here, folks.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm going out on a limb. I think Timothée Chalamet is going to be kind of a big deal. I'm definitely. I think we had equivalent shows like that in the UK, certainly when I was younger, but not so much these days. But yeah, I definitely. These days when I go down to the movies, I try to like get in there, so I'm like after the ads, but just in time for the trailers. Right. That's the sweet spot, you know.
Well, you're like right there too, so
yeah, exactly. It's great. It's like 2 minutes away.
Yeah.
The thing that's been bringing me joy over the past week is that I have been reading some comics. So one of my favorite sort of comic book authors is a guy called Ed Brubaker. I think he wrote my all-time favorite comic, and I think basically all of his stuff has been good in my opinion. I think most other kind of comic fans would agree, but his recent comic series is called Reckless, and it was essentially his, like, he talks about whenever he was growing up, his dad had a lot of like different books on his shelves, so he would like read, you know, he would have like really kind of more pulpy stuff, and he would have more, you know, academic sort of, you know, highbrow sort of books. He didn't like differentiate, he just enjoyed reading. So this was his kind of love letter to those kind of pulpy books, you know, these kind of like lone badasses who kind of like, you know, sort out problems. And the setup essentially is that this guy was an FBI agent, deep cover, got blown up by a bomb, left, you know, didn't injure him, but that allowed him to leave the FBI, and then he became like a sort of freelance problem solver. He just essentially has a phone line, and people can call up with problems, and he can decide whether he's going to help them. And it's just great. It's just exactly that. It really leans into the kind of really silly, sort of pulpy, tropes that kind of goes along with, and he gets into these really kind of noiry kind of stories, and it's really great.
That's
so
awesome.
I've been thoroughly enjoying that.
Are you reading, can I just ask, is it a paper book or is it a Kindle book?
It's a paper book it's a comics. It's
okay.
a comic.
That's
so
good.
With comics, I sometimes read them digitally, but I much prefer buying my comics if I can. So especially in hardcovers as well, because they look nicer on the shelf.
They sure do.
So yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
So that's what I've been enjoying.
Very good.
That's been bringing me joy.
Yay.
Okay. So folks, okay. So before we wrap things up, Beth, would you like to tell everyone where they can find us and stuff?
Yes. Find us at bendypodcast.com. And basically, if I program everything correctly, because that did not happen this week and I was a day late in getting everything up, so I apologize, everyone. We should be on all of the different apps, and our RSS feed goes everywhere. So just find us on, not YouTube right now because there's a glitch, and maybe it's because of Microsoft, but I'm rambling. BendyPodcast.com is the best place, and I'm blaming Microsoft for all of our current technical issues.
Very reasonable. Microsoft, you fiends.
I know.
Great. Okay, and in that case, we
need snacks.
All right, I know we do need snacks and a pee. Okay, that's too many details for you. All right, okay. In that case, we'd like to remind you all to stay Bendy.
My register is lower today.
Hey, yeah, it's show off. All right, okay, fine. Bye. We love you.
Bye. We love you. Bye, bye, bye.